Welcome back to Leaders of Healthcare. I'm your host, Shreyaj Valia. Now, in this video, I'd like to talk about something that I do believe is unfortunately trending, and it's been increasing ever since the COVID pandemic, and it's the big pharma is evil narrative. And unfortunately, it's peddled by a lot of patients and caregivers, and especially a lot of these lifestyle and wellness coaches. So I feel that as the opposing controversial thought, I wanted to put out more content on this. And so let's talk about a post that I read today on LinkedIn, right? So, and this kind of sets the scene a lot. The post opens, statins are big pharma's most overprescribed drug. 50% of heart attacks happen to people with normal LDL cholesterol. Statins can even suddenly damage your brain and give you insulin resistance. Here's the dark truth that big pharma is hiding from you and profiting from. So bear with me here. A lot to unpack, and obviously we got into an intellectual discussion on LinkedIn about this because I do believe in rectifying public health awareness. And so let's unpack this a little bit more. Statins save lives. I think we should be very clear. There's nothing wrong with statins and many other drugs. But I think let's not get into the clinical side just yet. Let's talk about the actual, the dark truth about pharma. So big pharma, big companies, J&J, AbbVie, Novartis, Bayer, Eli Lilly, all of these companies, yes, you're absolutely right. They are for-profit companies. They are on the New York Stock Exchange. They're public companies. Now, does that inherently mean that a for-profit company cannot be doing good for patients? I disagree. That's simply a wrong premise. And so if you ask me, big pharma and even physicians, all the people who are working in this industry, yes, we are making money from it, but we are actually have one of the most noble professions where we're helping others in the process of making money and making a livelihood from ourselves, right? Big pharma is one of the biggest employers on the world, right? You look at like a J&J or so, they have over 100,000 employees plus. That's 100,000 people that are employed by this company that's so evil, and they're running their families with it. And there's obviously an exponential effect of that. And their products, their treatments are saving people's lives or making their lives a little bit better. Now, this is not an official FDA claim, but this is an example. Views and thoughts are solely of mine and none of my employers or other entities that I'm associated with. But I feel passionate about this, so let's talk about it. So pharma has created so many novel therapies. Let's take statins, for example, that do save lives. And just because they make a profit from it doesn't exactly demonize them. But let's take it a step further. I think where this misconception and perception comes is that all the products, these pharmaceutical therapies, have side effects. And you know what? Everything has a side effect, unfortunately, in this day and age. So now let's take it a step further. The side effects are obviously minimal enough for these drugs to be even approved and come into the market by the FDA and other regulatory agencies in other countries. So there's a very stringent review process of drugs that I think the general public is just not aware of. They think a big pharma company can just come up, make up a drug and sell it in the market. It's hardly that, right? There's phases of clinical research that it's gated clinical research. So the clinical research has to pass a certain phase to be even taken to animals and then taken to humans. So there's gated clinical research. And then after all of these phases of research, that research has to be submitted to the FDA with multiple different types of documentation. There's a back and forth with the FDA. Then that drug gets even approved for sale. And sometimes it can get denied as well. So it's a very regulated and stringent process. And I will tell you, big pharma spends a lot of money to only invest in drugs that are actually going to benefit the public because they are actually incentivized to. Otherwise, the drug is not going to even get approved for sale. So I think the general public just needs to know that, we're not just making up products and selling them at the back of our trunk, right? I think there's a perception. And now let's talk about side effects. Yes, there are side effects, but generally every single label that gets approved and every drug that does get approved has a side effects in the label itself. Now, who's required to educate the consumer on this label? The physician, definitely the nursing staff in an office, but especially these private pharmacies. Could be a specialty pharmacy or a private pharmacy, regular pharmacy, retail pharmacy. The pharmacist should be explaining. Now, I hear, and this is some of the conversation that was happening on LinkedIn, like, oh, my pharmacist never told me about the side effects. Here's the thing, patient, you are an informed consumer. You can ask about the side effects. I think people have this high horse that, oh, healthcare and all the people who work in it are supposed to tell you every single last detail. Here's the thing. If someone actually sat you down and told you about side effects profiling, they would have to actually dive deeper into the research, because sometimes things that come up on the label that are side effects may be a very rare occurrence, but then they would have to go deeper into the clinical research of how often does this even happen. So it's a broad statement that every pharmacist, when dispensing a medication, is going to go into the side effect profile, short-term, long-term effects every single time with every single patient. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. But then you as the consumer have some power in this equation as well. You can ask about the side effect profile. And I'll take it a step further. Your physician and your pharmacy staff and all the allied health professionals do take into consideration your medical history, your family history, other medications you are on. So there's a large part of decision making that's already taken the burden off of your shoulders. So you as an informed consumer should ask, hey, why did you select this therapy for me? You are allowed to ask, are there better options for me? Hey, I heard about this option. Is that right for me? Be an informed consumer. And so I kind of want to sum up this video. I don't want to go into too much of a rant, but I do make this for the general public. And I also want to empower my fellow healthcare professionals to say, let's not be shy to tackle the controversy. Everyone is always demonizing physicians, allied health professionals, big pharma. But let's also call out the BS on the patient's perspective as well, saying, hey, listen, you are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to question the process. You are allowed to question what you put into your body. That's the freedom of choice we have. So let's not, and challenge your patients to say, hey, let's not jump to conclusions of we're all evil because we make money. We actually are altruistic. We chose a profession that is doing something very noble and helping others. So please don't put us down when we're trying to help you. And if you have questions about side effects or anything else, how much money do I make from this drug? Or how much money is Big Pharma getting kickbacks from this? Feel free to ask. Honestly, feel free to ask, because these questions are a little bit vague. And in a future video, we'll talk about the healthcare system in America and its convoluted pricing and reimbursement process, where unfortunately some of the middlemen actually make most of these profits. So really the evil rests with people that you don't even know about. I digress. We'll go into that in a different video. But again, for my fellow healthcare professionals, don't get dismayed when you see some of these topics and things like that. Know there's people like me that are trying to speak out against it, but I encourage you to speak out against it as well. The patient has a large power, and we have to remind them of that. And so I'll sum up there. Thank you for listening. And lastly, pharma is not evil.